So this is what we call mountains and rivers. It's just a couple of words that I've come up with to cover and to identify what this kind of a teaching is. And this is basically, you ask questions and I endeavor to respond to them in a helpful way. So you can start anywhere in any end of the spectrum of the Buddhist teaching or of teachings the way I teach. Go ahead.
How does awakening come about if it's not causal?
Because it's already the case. You're already completely awake. You're not separate from the Buddha. You're not separate from ultimate consciousness. Never have been. Nothing is separate from anything else ultimately. It's covered up by part of consciousness has, just to tell a story about it, has come apart from consciousness itself in order to form blazing balls of fire in the middle of nowhere. Other balls that are not blazing. Well, California is, of course. But I'm just saying it comes down into this relative situation. It's a very complicated, our particular biology is untraceable, even though the people in those professions try to convince us they know what's going on there, but they don't necessarily. Just make a lot of money. So you can go in that direction, you can go in the relative area and you get a lot of information, and you can be tied up in knots, or you can be one of the people who ties the knots because you're just such a smart person. You can stretch things this way. It's everywhere. Just all you have to do is go on YouTube and listen to all the people with all of their commentary on everything. And everybody's doing something similar. I'm saying, just look at it. Just look at it. Just look at it. I'm not saying don't think about it, but I'm saying just look at that which is thinking. Just look at the thoughts coming and going. Watch what moves. So until eventually, when I say eventually, you have a certain limited time in this realm we call the human realm, or any of the 6 realms. Here we are. You have a certain length of time where you can just watch what moves and you can return to your true nature, which is fundamentally never left. You have to see that. Otherwise, you'll be swamped by the particularity, the perpendicularity, all the other polarities that are involved with relative truth, pulling and pushing, shutting down, opening up, closing down, judging this, judging that, evaluating, concluding, excluding. Just a labyrinth of otherness that we believe is true. We fight with it, or we agree with it, or we join it, or we go to war with it more.
I'm curious of how to observe.
Yes, it's a good question. The way you observe is you hold everything still that you can hold still, which is your body, without being rigid. Sit in a symmetrical posture, and I can respond to questions around why I'm teaching in this way, coming from half a century of working with this, not only in this way, but in other ways. This is how I teach right now based on what I'm looking at. And so the how is to hold everything still that you can, and then watch what you have no say-so over. That will give you an idea. You don't know what thoughts arise in the mind. The first indication is you're thinking things that you can't control, but eventually you realize that you're not thinking. There is no thinker. That's more illusion. No one there, but it takes a while. It is so convincing. More.
I'm also curious of off the cushion. I know it's said kind of 2 ways to just hang out and not necessarily put a lot of tension on receiving, but,
Yes.
But also it feels like maybe there is an intention to receive off of the cushion.
I think there is. I'm not letting you finish your question. Maybe I should do that.
I'm curious about that area of the intention, or how does it look post meditation to receive?
Each person's so different. some people are actually actively working with that receiving area in post meditation. But they're doing it out of their understanding rather than out of some kind of a form or protocol they're trying to live up to. That's why I don't teach walking meditation. It's just, that's not wrong. It's just that I do that. I'll do walking meditation unless you really feel good doing that. It gives you a break from sitting. It's kind of like that in a way. I'm not saying that you might not feel like you benefit a lot from that. And perhaps you do. I could be wrong about that. It'd be something that the way I see it, I just don't promote it or teach it. Probably because I'm lazy and don't want to do it.
You, Devon, are you saying, not getting up, to walk around after we've been sitting for a while and are sore and stiff? That you don't recommend that?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I don't recommend walking meditation as a form, kinhin. Breathing, stepping on the out breath, stepping on the out breath, holding in shashu, and so on, having some kind of strict form. I don't promote it or teach it. But if you come in and do that, I'd be fine. You practice that as far as I can see. So Nathan practices that. He's trained in a lot of different places. I'm not going to interfere with his practice, doing what he needs to do. Not ask me about it. And if I did, I might probably would just say, just do whatever it seems okay, continue to do that. But I'm not going to start out a brand new meditator doing walking meditation. I think they should spend that time on the cushion. That doesn't mean that if they're sitting in all day, like in Ongo, after 2.5 hours of sitting there, they need to get up and move around. They can get up and walk and do it clockwise, so we're all going the same direction. You go ahead and walk around, and if you want to do the highly formal situation, go ahead. You all know how to do it. We do it formally in the what was it?
Takeaway.
Medenko, I was thinking of the Ratsu, but as far as, and that's just paying respect to the Japanese form. That's why we're doing it there for that short period of time. But I think it's fine to get up. You should pay attention to your body, what your body might need to get up and move. Might need to get up and go look out the window for a while or walk in the garden. Although I wouldn't I would not recommend it right now. Freeze your buns off. Anyone else? Yes,
When you're bowing, you emphasize sitting symmetrically.
yes.
What is it to sit symmetrically?
Well, sit like this. Have your posture fairly straight. I mean, you could sit like that. I don't think that's particularly conducive to any kind of awareness practice, but maybe you could start a whole movement of off-kilter meditation. Okay. That sounds good. Okay, meditation. Off-kilter. Just when I say symmetrical, I'm not saying be rigid or military. You sit up, sit symmetrical, put your hands in a posture that's left over right with the thumb slightly touching. I think that's a good form because it's not something we pretty much do casually. So there's an intention in that, an intention to hold still and observe the movement of the mind stream. Yes.
When you're bowing, so would there be a difference between sitting symmetrically or sitting intentionally? Bowing?
I think one is just a description of the posture. Sit with your back straight, sit. And sitting intentionally is just the intention to sit there. So some similarity there, but one is about the actual form. Symmetrical.
Thank you.
On the line, when we're on the cushion, can we actually get in the way by trying to sharpen the blade? So can there be a relative? um,
What do you wanna know?
Can we get in the way of awareness itself?
If you're holding still, your intention in your mind stream is to see what's moving, probably not, even though you tend to get caught in a daydream or going this way or going that way or start to fall asleep. Those are all awareness practices. There's no one right awareness practice. Although you may, in the classical sense, fall into come under the sway of traditional interpretations of samadhi. Adamantine samadhi or Vajra-like samadhi, indestructible, basic equanimity. Can't destroy it.
Mondobine, you say that if we're in awareness, we won't know we're in awareness.
Yes,
We won't know we are aware.
that's true.
So can we get in the way?
In a way.
I'm having problems with my questions today.
I think you're great.
Mondobine, what do you mean by that we are not aware? Is it because of that there won't be anyone that is aware?
Yes, it's just the identities that come apart. Identity comes apart in everybody several times a day, all day long. You just not aware of it because you can't be aware of nothing. Awareness can't be aware of awareness. Be another way of saying it.
Mondobine, so when we think we are aware or we feel like we are aware, that is all ego.
Well, I wouldn't condemn it too quickly. You say there's probably quite a bit of self-centeredness going on and they're trying to get a credential, probably. But I won't say it's that horrible thing of ego that we must avoid. But you could say there's some kind of something going on there as far as a relative, getting a reference point, using the reference point rather than the open dimension of just being.
Mondobine, does it make sense then in those moments to look at the identity that is, oh, feeling it's aware?
That's an area that comes up occasionally. This is in the area of Ramana Maharshi's teaching called Atma Vichara, or self inquiry. And that is an area that if that starts to show up for you, then I would think that would be it's not something I'm going to promote, but if you start to look at who's being aware, is that what you're asking? I think, but I wouldn't push on that too much. If that shows up spontaneously, who is this? Then that's seems appropriate. And you don't need to put a stamp of approval on it, but just notice it. But if it recedes, don't chase it down. If it comes back, just awareness. Well,
Mondobine, what is it to put, to meditate, show up on the cushion, but at the same time not grasp at or search for awareness?
well, you might be on the cushion and you might be aware that you're grasping. You might be aware that you're searching. It might be just awareness that you're doing that. That's what this is about, is awareness. It's not about awareness of enlightenment or something.
Mondobine, earlier today during book study, you were saying that it's not about understanding.
Yes.
It's not about, it's just about awareness. So when we're studying, it's still about awareness, not about the actual
Yes.
inquisition.
Yes, it's about awareness. Awareness, this is why we study, why I often say to people who are having trouble understanding a great teacher like Dogen. You don't have to understand Dogen. The only thing you have to do if you're a student of mine is to study Dogen. Study him. I have said it before and I'll say it again. How do you think I feel? I studied Dogen for many, many, many years and never could understand why, what he was saying. I just studied him because he was famous, because his teaching was at once magnetizing and kind of repulsive. I just kept studying him anyway, and that was and I was studying in the Tibetan tradition then, but I was studying some Zen literature. That was one of them. Dogen. Still don't understand Dogen. Study him anyway. It's not about relative understanding.
Well, Divine, it seemed like you were pointing today to even looking at the questions that we have and seeing that they're coming from the thinking process.
Yes.
What is the difference? How can we see the difference between questions coming from our thinking versus questions coming from awareness?
Well, they're going to come from thinking. But that's all right. Just continue. Ask questions, receive, and the teaching person will hopefully respond in such a way that they point at your true nature and not just fill you full of some kind of answers about something.
Oh, Divine, is our true nature not knowing?
It's closer to that. There's no separate being there. That's why it's quite difficult, disappointing when we're dealing with this situation and we want to know and we get disappointed because we work so hard. And we don't get the payoff just to come. It's disappointing. Christine.
Christine Bowing. In the Zen Buddhist teaching of a single bright pearl, it speaks to exactly what Undo's questions have been about. It's not about intellectual grasping or understanding. It's more of the direct experience inherent in all things. And that the teaching, that particular teaching, and that my question is, in that teaching, what is the true nature of the pearl? And as a student, how can we look at things in more of a direct experience? How can we more directly experience everything we go through every day as pearl-like and not what we add to it? Bowing.
Well, first of all, I don't encourage one to gather experiences. Awakening is not an experience. It may be experiential, it has some experiential aspects to it. And the teaching of One Bright Pearl, it's meant to point to the complete ultimate purity of the ultimate truth. But it's not, you're not going to experience the One Bright Pearl. That's a relative image that's supposed to, it helps us, encourages us to continue to look here, look within. You may never find a bright pearl, but it's not about finding something. It's about the intention to see the truth. The intention, that you intend to see the truth.
Christine Bowing. If we intend to see the truth, how can we grasp that we already know the truth? Bowing.
Don't grasp it. If you grasp it, anytime you grasp something, you cover it up. grasp, you just use a relative, like you actually cover up what it is.
Mm.
Just observe. Don't have to grasp.
Thank you, Valerie.
Further questions on Zoom?
Aren't you bowing?
Yes, you should.
You said earlier you still don't understand Dogen,
Yes,
and yet you can respond to our questions when we're quoting the text.
yes.
What is the difference between understanding Dogen and seeing the same thing that Dogen is pointing out?
I never claimed that. I see your confusion. That's when I address you, if you ask a question about Dogen, I address your confusion about what Dogen said, not Dogen. I don't know how else to say it without seeming even more obscure. Not trying to do that. I'm just saying it. It's not really about, I don't understand Dogen. But what a powerful teacher. Amazing. Another way of saying that is there's no way you can understand Dogen. Dogen is just deliberately confusing because he is teaching out of both sides of his mouth. Ultimate truth, absolute truth at the same time. It's also called co-emergent arising. Enlightenment and confusion arise together, co-emergent. Very similar. He taught that way. And it's interesting how many scholars are still trying to figure out what he said. I don't know how many of them are actually meditators, maybe.
Aren't you bowing?
Yes,
If I were to read you a quote from Dogen,
yes.
um,
Yes,
would you be able to sense what he is pointing at or something in that area?
I can, what I'm doing is, you could call it sense or whatever. Rather than saying, what is he pointing at? I might say, how does it look to you? I might say, well, what is your question about that? And you might come back and say, well, what is he pointing at? And then I probably will proceed knowing the way you asked the question. And I may respond to you in such a way to help you. If you're around receive, if you listen, possible. Each person is dealing with a different kind of confusion about everything. Quite often it's involved in covering things up. We don't see that. We don't see how much we cover up. Further?
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
When you're bowing, is it cover up confusion? Bowing?
Well, it's a cover up. You're covering something up, then yes, then that could have some circularity or some confusion happening in it. Some kinds of cover up are very simple. They don't have much movement in them, like distraction. You look at something, you're done with it. You don't like that. You don't want to look at it anymore. You don't want to smell it, taste it, touch it, think about it, or feel it anymore. And you just go to the golf course. Not that there's anything wrong with golf, where you just find something else to do. You distract yourself. Don't want to look at that. Not actually confusion. It's more like just ignorance, just ignoring. I'm going to look at it. Whereas a cover up might be an elaboration or judgment or evaluation or conclusion around that subject that actually gives you something to look at that you think it is, when you've actually covered up what it actually is with your ideas, your opinions, your judgments, and your prejudice about it. People get very emotional about what they're feeling. If you believe your feelings, you'll hurt others. If you believe your emotions and your feelings, and at the same time, you'll think you're helping them. That's how it works. That's how ego works. it self-validates. Otherwise, the ego's in too much danger if it doesn't self-validate. Or there if you have it.
Bowing. So in the example you just gave with distraction, does that indicate that we really know what's underneath the cover up?
Yes, no, actually, we really know the whole thing. We know that we are the Buddha. Especially those who are sitting in a situation where they're listening to someone talk about the Buddha's teaching. Unless you had some kind of glimmer that there was something to this, this is not particularly convincing. Sit down and look at your crap. Or look at the mind that keeps churning up all kinds of passion, aggression, ignorance, hope, and fear, blame, resentment, anger. So no, go back and look more. Look at it, look at it. Don't conclude, don't exclude, don't look away.
Bowing. So what is ignorance?
Well, it's a turning away or covering up.
But there's a knowing underneath that ignorance?
There's always going to be a knowing because you're not separate from anything. The fact that you've been downloaded into your human form gives you the opportunity to use this illusion that you're deluded by to mix and match. Push on this, pull on that, get some of this. And you may have been gifted with great speech. You may have been gifted with strong muscles. You may have been gifted with some kind of spot in the food chain where you're right at the head, where you get all the Bitcoin coming down. You get all of it. And there's no way to figure out why this person is getting all of this and this other person who's a wonderful, kind, loving person is treated like crap. And someone is trying to kick them out of the country. There's no way to figure that out. And if you go into blaming anything, you're adding to the confusion. And as I've said many times, don't believe anything I'm saying. I'm just asking you to consider it a little bit, reflect on it a little bit. And if you really feel like I'm misunderstanding this, or you could come back and we could have a talk about it. Please don't attack me. Thank you. Okay, then attack me. Yes.
Nathan Bowing. It's a broad question, but how does pride interfere with us realizing our true nature?
Of all the different kinds of feelings, emotions, that pride is extremely difficult because it looks so valid. You have some of that. You already know about it, and I do too. I'm saying it's about looking at that, not getting rid of it. You try to get rid of it, then it becomes trying to like justifying it or trying to function. Quite often pride will lead us in the direction of trying to hide out from the pride by being a servant of others. Well, it can show up that way. Or the other way it sometimes shows up is, oh, I'm nobody. I don't really need any, don't need to give me credit for anything. I just try to be as helpful as I can. Underneath the surface, there's this steaming pile of pride. More about it if you have it. That's a good area because it's so, it's been said, I think it was Padmasambhava was talking about that's the final Dharma gate. It's a pride. It goes through all the other ones. You can go through passion, aggression, ignorance, go through all those, and then you get to that final sticking point, which is, do you think you are somebody? And you think that somebody is somehow has some kind of special dispensation. And you can't change that. And it's not about changing it or stopping it. It's about just being that, just being whatever shows up. If there's ever going to be any such thing as humility, there'll be one who's really has been responsible for their pride. Not got get rid of anything. You don't need to get anywhere. We have a few minutes if there are some further questions. Jishi?
Machine blowing. I was struck by the sentence you said that Dogan's teachings are magnetizing and repulsive at the same time.
Yeah.
What is magnetizing? Is it our own Buddha nature? In those teachings?
Well, it's magnetizing in that if you hear him talk, I mean, we can go in and pick out a teaching or something. And we can kind of feel that there's some kind of quality of knowing in there, some kind of understanding that even though it's a relative construct he is presenting, something goes way beyond that. When he says something like, when the world comes, when you go out to the world, or go out towards the world, this is delusion. When you let the world all comes to you, my way of saying it is receive. You let the world come to you, this is awakening. Because you realize there isn't anything but this. Or if you say drop off body and mind, what he's saying is it's the attachment to the body as being a separate person, and the attachment to the mind as being correct or valid. And dropping that off doesn't mean, my way of saying it was not a matter of getting rid of it, but might be just be aware of how you're attached you are to those things. It'd be very difficult.
Is experiencing both at the same time, magnetizing and repulsive. Since I'm experiencing, each person is experiencing it, is it kind of Dharma gate to see that that dynamic which is happening in us between ego rejecting it and that
Too elaborate. It seems too elaborate. It's at least too confusing for me. You might be able to use that, but it gives me a headache. Happy birthday yesterday.
Every year.
Further question?
no, thank you.
Another question somewhere?
Joe Bowing.
Yes, Joe.
I'm kind of new to the Zen tradition. I practice Theravada, mostly meditative absorption, jhana practice. When you're in Shikantaza, do you ever get into any kind of absorption states or anything like that?
You could. You could get absorptions. Zen practice is Shikantaza practice is very open to having all kinds of things come and go. But the practice itself will keep you from getting attached to those absorptions, whether they're jhana states or whatever they may be. But you don't really need those. I mean, I'm not saying that they aren't valuable. The Buddha went through all those, and some people feel like it's necessary to do that. You know, and perhaps you have, and maybe that's been very helpful to you. I'm not here to discount anyone's practice at all. I'm just saying that the Shikantaza, if it's necessary for you personally, with your karma, with your 2 cents worth on the earth as a living being, to go through any of the jhana states or any of the absorptions, even maybe and stay in one of them, then you won't be able to refuse that, whether you practice Shikantaza or not.
Thank you, Bowing.
Sir, welcome.
Milka Bowing, question from YouTube from Ahmed. Is the task while just sitting and looking, just to notice the knee-jerk reactions that prompt the ego?
Yeah, that's a way of talking about it. It's just to watch those without doing anything with it. I mean, as you sit and as you practice, it may take lots of turns and flips to go different directions, but there's something to that. Sounds like something Trump or Rinpoche might have said. Anything else? About 5 minutes before we close, so if you have something. Please let me have it. Yes.
You should go on. I'm wondering how to. Is it necessary to have the intention to see what this is be more powerful than our intention to cover up?
Well, the interesting thing about the intention to cover up, you can get a success story there. You're tied into cause and effect. So you're going to get some success in that area to cover up. To do this, do that, to judge, to evaluate. But it's not going to smell very good, probably. And also the intention to see the truth as or the vow to be with all things. That has such a powerful openness to it. It's just like a strong wind blowing right into the darkness. And it's already without a self. There's no validation. You don't even know why you're even doing it. Quite often people will say, what am I doing this for? But that's a sign you're on the path. When you start to lose you don't lose the motivation, but you lose your understanding of what that intention actually is. That's why it's necessary to have a vow. Save all beings.
You should go on. So I'm wondering how to work with that if there isn't credentials for seeing what the truth is, it kind of relatively feels weaker.
No, it's powerful. Return to that vow. And you're a fully ordained monk, return to the vow. The vow is just like picking up a wind, you just go with the wind. There'll be no success story. You'll never get anything. You can't get somewhere. Let me say it one more time. You can't get somewhere if you're already there. And the only way you can realize that is to realize you're already there. It's already the case. Already. It won't show up as a particular, I got it, or oh, now I see. Very unlikely any of that will show up. It'll be worse than that and better than that. It'll be worse than that because there's no result. There is no awakening. There's just reality. And you're it. So you're liberated.
Milk Bowing, a question from Martine. How should we thank our teachers?
Thank you very much, sir. That works. Simple. There's different ways of doing that. So if you want more extensive ways of doing it, then their sevenfold Mahayana Puja is a way of heading in that direction. That's something you can read about. Traditional way of working with it. Support the teacher. Ask questions. Attend talks. Support the teacher and his or her community financially. If you can, you might not be able to, but if you can, help. This doesn't produce a product or a service, so therefore it's not much what was I using before? Bitcoin being produced here. Is that anybody got any Bitcoin?
We could make one up.
Can you pick up a Bitcoin?
Sokoji Bitcoin.
Who's really smart?
Well, some people are making up
Bitcoin?
Yeah.
I guess we could. Is there a final question out there in Zoom land? Oh. Anyone in here? Okay, we can close. We will- Pardon? Dedicate the merit. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for all of your questions. It's been great. And come again, tomorrow, is a all-day retreat, starts at
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock on Zoom, so if you want some company sitting, or if you're in your foyer or your meditation hall, you want to see other people sitting in real time. Some of them will be here and some of them are going to be on a work detail. Else? Thank you.
Your talk,
Huh?
your talk at 11:11.
Oh, I give a talk at 11:11. I don't know what the title will be, but I'll think up something.
It's only on Zoom.
Huh?
Only on Zoom,
It's only on Zoom,
not YouTube.
not YouTube. There we go.
May the merit of the penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Shi Ho San Shi 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 So San Mo Ko San Mo Ko the 10 directions, the 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering and fill them with light.